concept of a farm came about because, and it's not my idea, even though I'm here speaking to you about it, it's an idea that came from senior leadership that we were asked to explore, a group of us, to give a practical conceptual background to the learnings that take place in our classrooms, and not just from secondary but from primary. So you might remember having done life cycles in science, you might remember doing maths area volume in maths, you might do measurement of things in science and chemistry. There's a whole range of things that the farm allows you to get out of the classroom and explore those concepts further, okay? But senior leadership wanted to take it one step further and look at a sustainability model of farm. And could we in our backyards, so to speak, have a farm that would give our families enough produce to live off? So we're not just talking a herb garden or a square foot of garden that has a few veggies in it. We're talking farm scale stuff, okay? And more people are going into this urban farming concept because they know where their food is coming from. They can recycle and put nutrition back into the earth. And we also give something for our pollinators, our butterflies and our bees, something to feed on. And we all know that we have quite a dire need to protect our pollinators. And this comes on the back of not just the protests for climate change, but also on the back of the Pope's message in, you might help me out here, his new message, which is the...
Pope's new message.
It's about sustainability and greening the nation.
Yes.
And it's a Latin term that I just keep losing, but anyway. Anyway, the concept of his message is that we need to take care of our earth more than we are currently doing, because we all know that we're heading for disaster if we don't. So how can we teach that in our schools, and how can you be part of that? It's not about us building it and then you doing it. We want you to build it. We want the students to be involved in building it, because there's no reason why you can't, given the curriculum that we look at from prep to year 12. Every stage of this community could be contributing to that in their learning somehow. So we started off by investigating an urban farm that is at St Laurie's, Brisbane. And when we talk about an urban farm in this environment, we're talking completely urban. This is, I'm not sure if you know Brisbane very well, but the Mater car park, the Mater Hospital car park, that's the Mater Hospital car park there. St Laurie's buildings are on top of this section here, and this space that you see these tanks in was designed to just hold these 5 water tanks. As runoff from a playing field, so their rugby hockey playing field is situated at the top of this car park, and I'll show you that shortly. But already when you look down into this area, this is where they're growing their fish. And they harvest 160 fish from there per cycle. So that means they're growing fish. The boys then, it's a boys' school, the boys then come in, catch the fish, learn how to ethically kill fish, fillet the fish, take enough home for themselves, but then they freeze the rest up and they sell off some, and then they give some to charity. So they belong to a group that is called Fair Share, and they feed in. Fair Share is this organisation that takes leftover food and things from Coles and Woolies and all the supermarkets and flour and everything, and they make nutritious meals for people who might only get 1 meal a day. And it's a way of reusing produce that might be going old, that might be hitting its use by date quickly. Okay? So St Laurie's feed their fish into the fair share concept as well. Further back from that, so this is the top, sort of, you can see the classrooms at the top there. And then this is the entrance from the other end. So where this photo here is actually down the end, at the entrance down this end. So it's just a tiny little entrance, and as you come into it, there's all of this water comes from the 5 water tanks that are there, and that's why that space was predominantly set up there. So they're using just this nothing space. They actually don't even have ground there. They actually have to put everything into pots or raised garden beds because it's just all concrete underneath. So the concept of this urban farming sort of started to come alive here. They've got citrus trees in pots, they've got these raised garden beds. These were donated and the boys put them together, and they now grow a series of vegetables through there. And everything through the farm has a contributing factor to the edible cycle. Okay, so they have a hydroponics setup as well, and this describes a little bit about the hydroponics setup. And they have their chooks, and there's a bit of a story behind their chooks. Their chooks are obviously very visible to the car park, and keeping chooks, you have to cover about 5 different legislations and bylaws, and they were actually accused of not keeping chooks properly, not giving them enough free range time, but these chooks are out in that space every day. And RSPCA came in, couldn't believe the setup that St Laurie's had, and declared them gold star of Chook Hiltons, and the processes that they do. They sell their eggs and they get about 14 dozen eggs a week. So the boys built that Chook Hilton as well, and they did that in man arts classes. So everything is connected to the curriculum. Even the sign writing was done in an art class. So these are just some pictures of the farm, and you can see it's a bit bigger than your normal average farm, garden that you would have at home. This is a vertical hydroponics herb setup, and they produced enough herbs from that for their tuck shop and to gift lots to the fair share each week, and enough for the boys. Any of the boys who are involved in the farming project get to take things home. They even had this tank where that just shows the growing medium, not a lot of soil, but they were just in the process of redoing their other hydroponics vegetable beds. They were moving them, so this is those beds. We can't see them in operation. That's their worm farm. But this thing here was a pond that was set up to put in blue-eyed perch or something. It's an endangered species, and the DPI brought along the fingerlings to put in for St Laurie's to grow, and they come and collect I don't know what the next stage is from a fingerling to a whatever, but they then come in and collect the next stage. But they basically cycle through these blue-eyed perch, and they're bringing them back from the endangered list through putting them out in all these different farms everywhere. So they're contributing to saving an endangered species in Queensland. And there's just a few plants in there that you might not recognise, but they're all edible plants. That's Thai basil, you can put that in your cooking, all very easy. And it has shade over it. So all of this is recycled material. You've just got crates, old bathtubs. They do a lot of curbside collection. Some of it's donated, sheds were donated and repurposed, piping, etc. They were gifted this mulching machine, which enables them to create mulch. And then one of the boys came up with the concept of, could we recycle coffee? And they now do a recycling coffee station because of the number of pod machines around and the amount of coffee and aluminium and cardboard that goes into landfill. It's a way of people using pod machines. They don't realise the damage that they're doing. So they encourage the St Laurie's community to drop off their coffee pods. The boys sit there and open them, empty the pods, and put the coffee onto the worm farm and around the gardens, and then they recycle the different pods into the different bins where they need to go for recycling, because you can actually recycle all of that aluminium. And you know, the boys involved in the farming group, some of them set up there 5 days a week, some of them do 1 day a week. It depends on what they feel like doing. But they have quite a lot happening there. And then they have their greenhouse as well. And the greenhouse is where I see our Preps to Threes being involved, because they do a lot of life cycle stuff where they can grow things from seed. And then once they get to a point where they're no longer seedlings, they need to be put into a garden. That then becomes part of something science or other groups can look after. We've got grapes, or any manner of things. And it's all, that's just recycled roof tile that they've used as garden edging. And these things you can buy for about $50, or they're donated. That's Mr. Anderson there, just lifting up, having a look at the fish, getting very excited because he's a bit of a fisherman. But yeah, that's just one concept of an urban farm. There are a whole heap of other concepts of urban farm. There's Jane Street in New Farm, Brisbane. Huge space, probably about the space of the auditorium here. And the whole community of New Farm can come down and work the plot and buy vegetables very, very cheaply, organically, and it contributes again to things like fair share as well. So this concept of urban farming and using the space you've got to grow things that contribute to the life cycle of human beings and animals, instead of just looking pretty, is becoming something that we need to focus on. Yeah.
Golden Beach State School has a pretty big garden.
They have a really lovely garden, yeah. This was another one we saw. It was just a kitchen garden, and the reason I took this one, it's at a different school venue. It's a similar sandstone river, dry riverbed pattern sort of thing that we've tried to have here at school in some of our spaces, and that might be a concept we take on board when we design ours. Ours can be whatever we want it to be. It's just a dry slate at the moment. This is passion fruit. We can choose where we might have passion fruit that gives shade to an environment that needs shade. Those sorts of things. So lots of different concepts. Here we see a tree growing out of these recycled detergent things, industrial detergent holders. So again, if we can recycle things as much as possible, that would be our desire for this. And that's a tuckaroo tree, which you see growing on every streetscape around Clown, pretty much. And they grow 6 to 8 metres. It's only a young one at the moment, but that's a really good one for pollinators, and it's a native species as well. Anyway, I've just thrown in a whole heap of photos from different urban farms we saw and their shed setups and what they had. This one used round and vertical structures, that sort of thing. So I just threw in some photos that might help people. And then as part of the staff that went to see the urban farms, I put together a PowerPoint that I showed to staff, but it wasn't on there, was it? Unless it's at the top somewhere. Oh yeah, here. So there are 4 staff that put this together and presented it to other staff to see who might like to be interested in doing this, because we really had to do quite a bit of groundwork behind it, because it's a bit like the bees. You can't just start something without other people being involved or having curriculum links, because then the concept just dies. So we really need students to be on board with this. It can't be something that staff just do. So this is what we presented to staff. So if we think about Unity College, it's the size of a small town. There are towns that have less people in them than we have here at our school. So we've got 1,500 students, over 200 staff, we've got over 3,000 in terms of a parent body, and we've probably got another 2,000 odd or more who access our facilities on a weekly basis. So we've pretty much got a little town of 10,000 people. Are we an urban setting? Yes, we are. If we look at just the surrounds of our school, we're an urban setting. And not a house, not a little shack or an urban setting. We've got a lot of space that we can use. But with every urban setting, there are challenges about how we use that space. And we've got a number of challenges here at Unity. We've got buildings that are too far apart, we haven't gone second level, we've got all this space, but we haven't utilised this space very well. And one of the spaces that we've identified that we don't use well and that looks not very welcoming to our people who come to our community is when they look through Macushla and they see the grounds sheds. So Mr McShay challenged us with using that space first. So when we looked at that space, we thought, yeah, we could probably do that. It's a little bit better than what St Laurence has got. At least we can dig down into some soil. Our soil's not good. We had our top layer of soil go when this site was developed, so we actually have no topsoil with nutrients in it. We have a clay-based soil. So if you understand the concept of clay, when it's wet it holds moisture, and when it's dry it repels moisture. So a clay cup, this one's now been fired and coated, but a clay cup would repel moisture, just wouldn't take anything in. The hotter it gets, the drier it's going to get. So it's not a good environment for plants where moisture is held or repelled. We want constant moisture or soil that is free draining. So we need to condition our soil a bit. This is a St Laurence mission, and it's not a bad mission to have. Contributing to the food cycle and having sustainability in practice. We always talk about sustainability, but whether we do it here at Unity College and recognise sustainability for what it actually is, I think we need to up it a couple of notches. So we've got our Containers for Change program, we've got our recycle bins. Our students really don't know how to use them properly, and that will come with time and education. Can't expect things to be done overnight, but if we constantly get that message through that anything that we do that is not of a sustainable nature is actually damaging to ourselves and our future planet, then we need to change. Okay, so there are lots of things in here that you don't really need to be aware of, mission statement, etc. Yeah, so that's where we started. So when I get back to here, I need to close out of that. Okay, when I get back to here, we then split up into small groups, and we had a group looking at the mission, and we sort of come up with a mission that is going to work. We then had a communications group that was going to help us draft up communication to the wider community and how they could be involved. So if we're going to be asking for recycled material, we didn't want every class writing their own letter asking for recycled material. We wanted a standard pro forma so that classes could access these bits of information and go, yep, this is what we need, we're going to send this to these people. So you choose who you're going to send it to try and get the materials you need, because that's going to depend on the projects that you're doing. But we wanted something that was going to give people who got this letter or this information an idea about what the farm was trying to achieve without taking away from your curriculum goals as well. Okay? And then we had a site planning group, and they basically, I'll come back to that because that's the most exciting bit. And then we had a guidelines for use groups. So we've really tried to nut out a few things so that things work smoothly. So how are we going to make this work? If a prep teacher walked in there with her class or their class, how would they know how it operates, and how would they know to get started and set down so that the next class coming in could do so easily? We don't have a lot of our spaces in our school where different classes can move in and move out seamlessly. And that's because our curriculum is so targeted to who we're teaching, but this is a space that needs to be welcoming to everyone. So we needed something that was going to be all-encompassing from prep to year 12 and any other groups that might come in and use it. There's still a bit of work to do on that because we've only been able to imagine so much at this point, and that will grow. And then we had a group working on curriculum, and you won't see much in here other than what Mr. Pennell, Ms. Duncan and Ms. Freeman have put in so far. Sorry. The primary school have worked on their own documents, and the whole reason for this link for staff to access was to go, how could I be involved? And invite them to be involved rather than to be constantly nagging people to be involved. And we really needed staff to take ownership of this, because unless they took ownership, then you as students wouldn't be able to take ownership of it. But we see it as a really powerful tool to your understanding of what you're learning in your classroom, as well as a powerful tool for you to understand what sustainability looks like, feels like, is like. More and more of the jobs that you're going to be going into are going to have a sustainability nature to it. And the more you can contribute to that, the better, the more employable you're going to be. And the more you can speak to what is sustainability, the more employable you're going to be. So then we heard of these $25,000 grants going up, and we went, oh, let's try and get some money for these classes. So our site group came up with a little concept, and Mrs. Preston put all of this information. I didn't have to give her much at all. Mrs. Preston is a talented employee of our school, and we undervalue her way too much. She just went into this, had a bit of a read, and came up with a very powerful grant application. She then went, asked the site group to give her something to work with in terms of what does the site look like and what does it need. So the site group came up with this concept. Now, this by no means is going to be what it may end up looking like. It's a starting plan. This was just to give us a guide to see what we could fit on the space and what we might need. So we started off with raised garden beds for this mass sustainable concept garden that Mr. Freeman and Ms. Duncan have got you working on. And that really is a powerful starting point to this garden, because you're going to set the well-being tone of the garden too, in that it's not just about farming fruit and vegetables and herbs and harvesting a few eggs and that sort of thing. This is about creating a space that contributes to the well-being of students and staff as well. So if you imagine how green spaces and being out in the bush make you feel, a garden is that powerful as well. So how do we make this garden something that people are drawn to, that they want to sit in and be in? So that's really where you're starting from, and your mass gardens are going to give people a focal point to that. Am I terming them mass gardens? Is that the right term? Right, okay. So different shapes, different sizes, different colours, different plants in there that contribute to well-being. So there might be beautiful plants that contribute to pollinators coming and feeding. There might be plants that have a smell that create a sense of calm. What are the things in there that will contribute to that garden when it gets finished, and what might it look like? So we're trying to fill that space. We've also got a couple of native beehives in here. They don't have to stay there. Again, as I said, it's just an idea. But we wanted the ability for students to come in and look at beehives where they didn't actually have to suit up. So by putting native bees in there, we get the pollinators close. People can sit in that garden and watch what bees do. And these are the tops of the tanks. And we thought, well, there's a space we don't have to mow around, so that might be a good space for some seating, classroom seating space. But let's make that classroom seating space really nice, where we want to be out there in a beautiful learning environment.
That's what we're thinking also, we could paint some math shapes and that underneath the
Oh,
seats,
lovely.
so
Yeah.
measurements, and one of them we were thinking maybe we could do concentric circles where we can do
Oh, yeah.
the circumference of different circles. And,
Yeah. Yeah, and even by, like, if you imagine a visitor coming into this space and seeing that you've got those concentric circles with, you know, a measurement beside it or something, they'd go, what's that for? And you start talking about it being a maths garden as well, and they're like, oh wow, it's more than a farm. It's got way more to it than just being this concept of a farm, big farming structure that we have when we go out past the range. So that was the starting point. Obviously we're going to need a greenhouse and potting areas to pot up things, so this might be our working space. Trying to hide that working space as much as possible, because that's what Mr McShay has challenged us to do, so that when people look through Macushla here, they're looking at a space that invites them into that space. Now, we did have citrus trees coming along here. That might not be the right space for citrus trees. We probably need someone to come in and tell us that that's a good concept. But at the time of the grant writing, it seemed like a good idea. So we've put a lot of citrus trees there. And again, if we've got mandarin trees there, people can come and get a mandarin for lunch.
So Marcus, that question you had the other day of how we're going to stop people going in there and eating the food, well,
We really want
I'm
them eating
taking
it
it.
for And there might be some food that some classes are saying we're harvesting this because it's becoming part of our project. So for example, my business class may choose, I'm going to encourage some of them, to do a vertical herb garden so that we can sell things to the co-op and make some money that way, or we can then sell it to the staff, and that might be a starting point for someone starting their own business when they leave school. So we'll actually investigate this hydroponics setup as well.
and these ones here,
Yeah,
the
market garden stuff,
we
yeah.
could grow things like zucchinis or
Yeah.
tomatoes, or
Yeah.
someone mentioned pumpkins the other day because they don't get a huge amount of sunlight.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Cucumber,
So,
anything that
things
is
that we
high
could
volume
use
and highly
and sell.
nutritious.
Yeah.
And we thought we'd go hydroponics because there's another section of Year 10 maths and science where they have to measure liquids. So if we can incorporate the measurement of the hydroponics, pH levels, etc., and then those students be involved in making sure those pH levels are right during the week, for the weekend, etc., and we can shut the hydroponics down over the holidays and Christmas, start them up again. So it's not a farm that's going to be labour intensive. Over the Christmas holidays, we would actually finish off these garden beds. We'd actually get them back to where they lie fallow for that hot season, and then we come back into term 1 after Christmas and we get the garden beds up and running again. So we don't want this to be an onerous task for our ground staff or for our classes that are involved, but something where if there are enough classes involved, the maintenance is very little. We then thought there would be spaces for art classes to be involved, and Mr. Tanner liked the idea of maybe painting signs just here on the back of that. There's a wooden fence there, and maybe something entering into the garden from this angle where we advertise the urban farm. Some classes looking at sustainability and looking at fencing through here where we could use recycled fishing nets and pole fencing or whatever, so that when the balls come across from Macushla, they're hitting that recycled fishing net, but it's not stopping the breezes and it's not stopping airflow from going through to the gardens.
So
And
you
people
got a
can still
question the
see.
other day about how we stop the balls?
Yeah. So another class has already come. Well, when I say another class, other classes are talking, but because it's going to change next year, those classes may not continue with those concepts, but we've got enough concepts of what classes are thinking of doing to run with so many sustainable options. We even thought of growing some mushrooms here, and that was a concept that came by because we've got this dead space there, and there are certain mushrooms that if we can sell them to the restaurants will actually yield quite a bit of money. That might be something the business class wants to take on board. It might be something another class wants to take on board.
Was it that you yesterday suggested we went and had a brief look at the site yesterday?
Yeah.
And in that space, was you suggested we had like the pond there because a lot of water goes there anyway? Or was that Hannah?
No, I suggested the Japanese garden thing.
Japanese garden. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So that could, there's certainly spaces in all of this where, because we've got these, we're trying to connect and join bits and bobs, it doesn't matter where things end up being. The other reason why we decided let's do raised garden beds to start with is because if we find that things don't work, they're easily moved, okay? And then by the end of the year, we should be ready for some chooks, hopefully. Everyone's at me at chooks and even some llamas, and I said it's got nothing to do with me.
Alpacas.
Alpacas, did they see? I don't really
Lily loves dogs.
I think having a, yeah, well, see, that could be down the track, Lily, but you'll be finished by then, but you could come back and manage it. That could be your, that could be your business. Seriously, that could be your business. Anyway.
So for the start of this, Miss Wise, we have to do for this unit, we've got to do area, measure, scale, and all that. So we thought we might start mapping out the garden and actually the drawing to scale.
Oh, fabulous.
And how we could then
That's not the
design,
scale.
and then we could design some of it. So,
that'd be great.
are you, is there anything in particular that you want them to look at if they're going to do that?
I would suggest to concentrate on this space first.
Yep.
Over the holidays, all of this space is going to get prepped.
Yep.
So it will become a clean slate,
Yep.
and it'll just have crusher dust
Okay.
down.
Yep.
But where it needs to be levelled, it'll be levelled, and where it needs to be raised, it'll be raised, and where it needs to have drainage. So there's drainage channels
Yep.
here that we'll put rocks around so that
Perfect.
water can drain, but things won't get through, sort of thing. So, yeah.
So what we might do then is if we do the entire site, measure the entire
Yeah.
site, and have a full plan, and
Yeah.
then we will concentrate on the Matt's garden,
Yeah,
and therefore they can then build their shapes. And you still want us to look at using those crates?
lovely.
To the back
They're
of
all ready
business?
to roll, and there's
Perfect.
whole heap of pallets at the back, but we can get new pallets from Bunnings.
Okay.
So we're just going to take the ute down there, or the truck down there, and pick up pallets.
Okay, fantastic.
So
Now we're still looking at moving that fence back to the end of the building, aren't we?
that fence is being moved over the holidays.
Perfect. So if when we're measuring, we want to measure with that in the new location,
In the new
and that's
location.
directly on the back of the building, isn't it?
So the new fence is here, so it'll line up with the
Back of the building.
back of the
Yep.
building,
Perfect.
and there's enough space between that fence there for a gate
Perfect.
for the machinery to still come through.
Yep. Perfect. Excellent.
So the reason why we want that is we may, hopefully in time, we've got things like four-wheelers that help us move around, and we just park them around here, okay? But we'll know by the end of this month whether we've got the grant.
I want to buy and drive 4 wheels.
Well, so if you imagine a
Let's get a
four-wheeler,
maths class.
with the mulch on the back of it, yeah. So,
New drive.
and the reason for that is we've got the Indigenous garden down the back as well, so we hope that the Indigenous garden becomes something that gets a go on again as well. And there's some plants in there that are looking really exciting for next year's hospitality classes in terms of what they might cook with, and other things that we can add to that as well.
So when we're measuring the garden,
Yep.
we want to measure it from the corner of the hospo building
So
across the IEC.
that corner of the hospital building's here, but there's that outdoor area there.
So we're measuring from here,
Yeah, you may as well because we can use all of that.
and then all the way down to the end of that path really. we're not going to do much down
Yeah.
here, are we?
It'd be interesting to see how much sun this gets throughout the day.
Yep.
That would
That's
be,
another thing we can measure as part of our maths that we need to do.
because
we can
that could
measure the
become a
sunlight in
whole
certain
raised garden there with things in it. Or that
This
could
could
become
be
a
a whole. I was
Japanese
going to say,
garden
Lily, this could be a Japanese garden down here.
down here, leading into it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We get some fish, like those big fish.
Koi.
Coy.
Mm.
And then
Don't be coy.
after Saturday, that same thing.
Oh, little zen garden.
You could use little gravel rather than sand, because
Yeah.
the smaller gravel and it will hold better.
Yep.
I love that idea. And yeah, those little bamboo plants,
Yeah.
button plants.
Okay, so
Really
for us to go from here, first of all, the first couple of weeks we're going to be measuring and drawing into scale,
Yeah,
and getting up a master plan. And from there, we then are going to start designing using the crates and raised garden beds for the maths.
Yeah.
We can also put in some suggestions for some of the areas we can use, so we can measure the sunlight and
Yeah.
all that in certain areas and see what it gets. And
Yeah.
are you happy for us to do that?
absolutely. And if you have ideas,
Hmm.
put them forward, because this is just a mob of staff that have said this is what it could look like, because we were rushed to getting things in for the grant. Like Lily's idea of a Japanese garden, it may not produce food, but it is actually contributing to the well-being and to the curriculum of our school. We teach Japanese here, so it would be a perfect, Lily, you could actually go to the Japanese class and say, we'd like to do a Japanese garden space in here.
Yeah.
How can we, what's the design features that we need to consider? So are there protocols that we need to follow? So it's a bit like doing an Indigenous garden. You would ask an Indigenous elder, what are the first steps to doing a garden? What plants do we need to consider, etc. So that might be a way of getting the Japanese class
And we
involved.
could go there, with measurements and say, okay, this is the actual size of the garden.
Yeah.
And get them to come up with some of the designs as the Japanese class of what they'd like to see in the Japanese garden, what they want to include. Yeah, be fantastic.
We have contemplation gardens for our
Yeah.
RE classes to go to.
Yep.
So it'd be lovely to contribute to the Japanese and
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you think about, I think it's a great idea. If you think of other things that, and keep it on a sustainable farming curriculum notion. If it doesn't fit in this space, don't worry, because we have so many spaces in the school where we can continue that farm feel. If you think about what lies in this space around here, there's acres of space. So do we actually have our citrus orchard, instead of lying here, we actually have our citrus orchard over here, where we can mulch underneath it, water it differently.
We've got directly going between the art building and the science buildings.
Do we have an arbour that goes all through here with passion fruit over it instead? Or do we just leave that?
I love passion fruit. We used to pick it up. We had passion fruit when we were kids. It was
Yeah.
nice, and my parents thought it never fruited because us kids go over and pick the passion fruit as soon as it was, and we just break it open and eat it.
We did the same. But you know, if we move these, does that actually give us more space for raised garden beds where we can grow a whole heap more of produce? We have this is our produce area, citrus area,
And
passion fruit arbour somewhere else.
and even the maths garden, like
Maths
we
garden
might
is
decide as we're
beautiful.
going, the maths garden
Yeah.
might be better off in a different
Different
location,
space and
connected
location,
somewhere.
yeah.
Looking at the entrance, like archways, are they gonna be the type where you can like grow vines?
Yes.
Yes.
But we'd love them to be made from recycled material. Now we've costed a whole heap of stuff from Bunnings and other places if we were to buy it new. But the whole idea is that we're not going to buy it new, and that money that we get from the grant is going to go way further than we need it to go. So hopefully that's going to help us get things up and running really quickly. And wouldn't it be great if that was established before you left next year? Be very cool.
I had
That's
a suggestion.
That's your legacy.
I had a suggestion, Miss Myers. Was it you? I think it was you, Lily, that said could they have something? Oh no, it was actually Marcus. They have something where they could have like their handprint or their names or something, and some of the people that were helping to
I think
establish
there
this
is
garden.
something that is part of Miss Duncan's RE curriculum, which will end up being that. Is that right, Miss Duncan?
Yeah, that's correct.
I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, am I?
Look, it's out.
It's a really cool idea anyway. Or do you want, so that, did you, or what's it? Were you going with one idea or two? Which one? Do they get a choice?
Talking about in the garden.
So there's a couple of things that are part of the RE program, sorry, just so I can see what I'm talking about. So
You just need I was conscious just recording my voice now, so that my face directly entertains recording my voice as well. That sounds terrible.
It's my worst nightmare, someone at that door.
So, as you know, we just started Unit 3 for R&E and we're doing religion and contemporary culture. After that, we're moving into heroes and role models, and we're going to actually be looking at people who are leaders in environmental sustainability, and I'd like to say our very own Mrs. Jill Myers is possibly one of them that you might want to focus on for that. So, part of that, as you know, is doing a podcast about it. So you will be able to produce a podcast related to the work you're doing in the urban garden and the things that you learn from some people, both locally and globally, that are our leaders in the area of sustainability. Then we'll move into spirituality for Unit 4. Part of that will be to do a project. So you started with a project at the start of Unit 1, you'll finish with a project at the end of Unit 4, and your project will be around creating your own piece of artwork to go into that garden. That is a reflection of who you are, or you might choose to do a whole totem of the whole group collectively and how you could use symbols to represent who you are. And possibly some of the things that you've learned about sustainability. We will be using the document called Laudato Si, which is the encyclical that the Pope has put out, that talks about sustainability and the importance of it in caring for our environment. And you will know from our social justice unit that we spoke about the importance of caring for others and also caring for our environment was part of the Catholic social teaching that we covered then. So it's a combination of both Laudato Si and Catholic social teaching that will come out of that unit of spirituality. That links in with the project that you'll be doing in the garden. So that will be part of the RE.
So there will be something in the garden that resembles you. I'm not adverse to having another thing in there. For example, if you had enough time to build one of the arches and you wanted to put your handprint on the arch, not a problem. But keep in mind that paintings of handprints end up getting weathered, so that's why we were going with this idea of using some clay that would stay longer. So whether you make a symbol, square, cylinder, whatever it was, that becomes part of a totem, and that's your class totem, and then we glaze that and it stays in the garden, it becomes part of garden art, which is really cool. Again, contributing to the well-being of that garden. People want to go in there and have a look and see the cool stuff that people do. And individually you might think, oh, my piece isn't very nice, but when you put it together with everyone else's pieces, it looks amazing.
We can also do, we're going to be doing raised garden beds. We can actually have the raised garden beds made out of all those separate little plaques and totems built up around the edges of all the gardens that we can still move.
Yeah.
Instead of a big tall totem, it could be just
around the edge, yeah.
Here's the year 11 class of 2019.
Yeah.
And
It will weather though if you
Yeah.
paint though. So if you're wanting something more long term, so that in 10 years when you come back for your school reunion, you can go, oh, there we go. But if you use paint, 10 years it won't be there. Okay? So I know at the previous school I was at, one of the retreats the girls would do is make a little tile
Yep.
out of, and they all got glazed, etc. And so in various walls around the school, so if you were looking out at that wall there, there'd be a class wall of your.
That's what I meant with the garden.
Yeah.
Like you have the tiles and you
Yeah.
can make it to the sides of the garden.
Oh yeah,
With the tiles.
yeah. So long as the wood that it's adhering to is going to be. So there you want to try and get as many hardwood pallets as you can rather than softwood pallets.
Definitely. Anyone have any
Softwood
questions from
pallets
this
just don't last.
slide? Any questions at all about the garden project and how we're going to start with this? Fantastic.
So the primary school have already been collecting lots of those seeds for change thing from Woolies.
Yep.
Is that what they were called? Seeds for
Seeds for something.
something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they've collected a whole heap that they're going to start planting next year. So at the if you finish your garden beds this year, the first thing that you'll be doing next year is measuring the volume
Yeah,
of
volume
soil
of
that
yeah.
we need to order to put in there.
Okay. Very good.
And that will be really cool.
Yeah.
And I'd love to give you a shaded space to build under. It's just been taken over by someone. Back that one back, don't I?
Excellent. Thank